Greetings, friends. It is good to be with you. Thank you for undertaking this Bible study. Thank you for putting your heart and your mind, your time and your energy into this process. I know this, that as a result of this study, our faiths, both individually and collectively, will be deepened. Our connections will be strengthened. We will be better for having done it, and yet that is not to discount the work that you will put into it. As we begin this teaching lesson, I want to call your attention first to the setting. I have chosen this setting because it's a setting that brings me peace. I hope you find a setting at your home that offers you a place free of distraction and a place where you might be fully present. Light a candle like I have if you wish. Grab a cup of tea if that helps. But find a place where the distractions of every day might not so interfere. There are two ways that I would invite you into beginning each time you study. One is first to identify something that may be on your heart that's preventing you from being fully present and letting it go. The second thing then would be to find a joy or blessing, to recall and to take the place of what you have just let go. Doing those two things is not just a great way to read the Bible, it's a great way to live. There are many purposes for this Bible study. Part of it's to introduce you to the breadth and the amazing beauty of the Bible and all of its richness. And part of it also is to give you tools to be able to better read, better explore, better apply it to your life. For this process of Bible study will always be a personal one, applying the truths of these texts recorded over time to our current moment. Professor Carolyn Sharp reminds us that there will be times where we need to appropriate the Bible for our own circumstances to find hope or possibility. And yet our goal is to constantly read the Bible to better understand its frame and its network. We remember that reading the Bible should always be an opening perspective, that it should always open us to greater truths. So if you find yourself wanting to come to some easy conclusion or to grip onto some truth tightly, resist that. One thing that you might not be used to in terms of the language and times the Bible was written is that the culture, especially of the Hebrew scriptures, was one of both and. As you read the Bible, know that the Bible makes possible for two things to exist, even if they're in tension or conflict with one another simultaneously. Want a good example? We call Jesus both fully human and fully divine. Both those things are true. And yet we don't have to resolve exactly how they work together. You will notice there are multiple creation stories. You will notice that there are multiple accounts of exactly how many days it took for the flood to take place and or how many people came up to join Moses on the mountaintop. All of that is because the humility we need to undertake when we read the Bible to recognize that the Bible points to truths rather than is some how-to study manual. Speaking of that, a question often comes up. How many books are there in the Bible? I'm not going to tell you the answer. I'm going to force you to look at the table of contents and find out for yourself. But one piece I will say to you is that the Bible is one book. It's been all knit together because we believe it all speaks together, that it all has something to say, and it all together has meaning. Most of what you'll read in the Bible has a common viewpoint, at least overall. It may differ on details. Look at the Gospels. They don't exactly line up. But then some of the books have been put in the Bible to be counter narratives. Books like Jonah and Job come to mind as ways to make sure that we don't get too comfortable with this truth, but rather leave room that a greater truth might always come to us. There are two things I want to tell you about your Bible study, and then I'm going to let you go and get to it. Remember that there will be a conversation guide in addition to your study manual for your small groups. The first is that context will matter. The Bible was written centuries ago, sometimes millennia ago. And as Dean Harry Attridge would point out to us, he would say that part of the point of reading the Bible is always to wonder what's at stake in the given passage. So as you wrestle with any given passage or any longer story, always ask yourself the question, what's at stake? What is it that they were trying to explore? Because when we understand that, we may not understand the answer they came to, as well as the question that we may also be wrestling with. Oftentimes, as you read the Bible, you're going to come across specific passages or stories that are confusing or vexing, joyful or troubling. If it doesn't seem to fit exactly with what you're doing, I would invite you to apply the following rules of context. First, look at that passage within its immediate story or its immediate location, with the tales that come before and after. Take that sentence, that questioning, puzzling piece of the Bible, and say, how does that function within this particular narrative? That may give you some insights. Second, ask the question of, how does it perform within the larger book in which it's written? How does the sentence apply, for instance, in Paul's letter to the Romans? There are great theological things at stake there. How does that particular sentence rely to the larger conclusions that the Bible, that he comes to later? How does some of the statements that appear to be judgmental hang with the fact that in the end he says nothing can separate us from the love of God in Christ? Things worth wrestling with. Third, think about how the Bible itself then, how that passage lays out within the larger corpus of which that book is a part. The Gospels as a whole, how does what Mark's saying compare to Matthew or Luke? How is Isaiah's prophecies consistent with or different from Jeremiah or Hosea? Compare what you know of the truths of that section with larger truths from other parts of the Bible. That will give you a help. Finally, take a look at larger contexts, like Old and New Testament or the Bible itself. Think about the larger narratives of the Bible, and if you're still wrestling with the text, put it in dialogue with some of the larger messages. In the end, one thought that comes to my mind in the United Church of Christ and many denominations is the fact that we take the Bible so seriously that sometimes we dare not take it literally. After all, Jesus asked hundreds of questions and answered precious few. Resist your temptation to do two things as you read the Bible. One is to make it mean something immediately and to define something narrowly. Jesus spoke in parables because he always wanted to expand our thinking about something. So defy the temptation to say this means that. Second, treat it like a Bible study. What you read will come into conversation with theology you might hold or hymn texts or other things, but let the Bible speak for itself. And then as we go through this process, I promise you, greater theologies or summations will come to our mind. The last thing I want to do is talk to you specifically about your study Bible. Remember, it is designed for the purpose of study. So make use of it. Write in it. Underline things. I would suggest a color-coded process where you use colored pencils and develop a code for yourself. Maybe one color being those things that excite you, another color being those things that vex you, another color being what do you have questions about. One thing I learned the hard way, don't underline all the passages you already know and love. It will just make it more complicated. You will know those. You will know how to find them. Instead, draw your attention to the things you might want to bring to your small group or things that are striking you in this particular moment. Years later, when you read it, it will give you some perspective of where you've been. Second, use the elements of your study Bible. You will notice that before each section of the Bible, like the Pentateuch at the beginning, there will be a couple pages that describe it. Read them. They will be helpful overview. Also, make sure to read the introductions to each of the books, for they will contain good information that will help you understand what you're about to uncover. Finally, there are two pieces to a study Bible that are important. At the bottom of each page, under the text, will be smaller print. Those are notes about the text. Most often, the text itself will dominate the page, but sometimes the notes will be even longer. Here's the way that I found it to work best for me. I try to read that section first and then go back and look at the notes. For instance, Genesis 1 is the first story of creation. Read all of Genesis 1 and then go back and look at the notes to explain those things you missed. Having said that, some of my friends at Div School did it the other way. They read both simultaneously and in dialogue with each other. you'll need to find the way that you want to go. Secondly, you'll notice little letters after some of the text. Take a look at what those letters mean. At the end of the text, there will be some definitions there. Those letters indicate phrases or words that either are not consistent in the ancient texts or where translation may be an issue. It can really change how you read them, so take your time to read them. Friends, as you gather for your small group, remember that this is about as much about relationship as it is about learning. Take the time to get to know each other, for when you do, you will be able to more openly and honestly speak of both the joys you're discovering in the Bible and the things that trouble you. Being vulnerable to what the Bible evokes in you will allow this to be a richer and more full conversation. And that, in the end, is what this is all about, isn't it? In addition to this video, you will find a conversation guide for your study groups. You are welcome to use that, as well as the guide that's in your study manual. Remember that I'm never far away. Your group should send me the questions that you had at the end of your session, and each of you are welcome to contact me as you need to. We'll figure this out as we go. It is a new and learning process. But at this moment, I'm excited that we're starting. And so as you head off for your studies, I say peace be with you. Thank you, friends.